All right, welcome. So let's get right into it. When you're learning a new language, there are two hurdles that just stop almost everyone. First, actually understanding what on earth people are saying to you. And second, being able to speak without that deer in the headlights feeling where you just freeze up. Today, we're going to crack the code on both of those.
I just love this quote from Dave Barry. It's so perfect because it captures that feeling, doesn't it? The second you step off the plane in a new country and you're just hit with this wall of sound, it all just blends together into noise. But what if I told you there's a really specific biological reason for that, and it's not your fault?
And this right here is probably the most important thing to understand. The fact that you can't pick out individual sounds has nothing to do with you having a bad ear for languages. It's actually a feature of how incredibly efficient your brain is. It's a kind of programming that got installed when you were just a tiny baby.
I mean, this is the question, isn't it? It's what drives every language learner crazy. You hear two words, they sound completely identical to you, but a native speaker, well, they look at you like you have two heads. To them, the difference is as clear as day. So what are they hearing that we're not?
Well, here's the mind-blowing answer. When we're infants, our brains are wide open to every single possible sound in human language. But to get really, really good at our own native language, our brain starts to take shortcuts. It begins filtering out any sounds that it decides are unimportant. It literally prunes away the ability to easily hear sounds that don't change the meaning of words in our mother tongue.
This chart shows it perfectly. A baby's brain hears this beautiful, continuous spectrum of sound. But an adult brain, it's already sorted that spectrum into these big, familiar buckets or piles. For example, if you're an English speaker, you have a very distinct R pile and a very distinct L pile. But for a native Japanese speaker whose language doesn't make that distinction, their brain just throws both sounds into one giant pile. It's why a Japanese baby can hear the difference between rock and lock no problem, but for many Japanese adults, it sounds like the exact same word.
So yeah, our adult brains are programmed to be a little lazy and ignore these new sounds. But here's the really cool part. That programming isn't permanent. We can absolutely break it. We can intentionally rewire our brains to start hearing those critical differences again. In a way, we can train our ears to hear like a baby again.
So how do we do it? What's the secret? The most powerful tool we have is something called minimal pairs. Seriously, these are a total game changer. All they are is pairs of words that are completely identical except for one single sound. This is like a laser-guided missile for your ears. It isolates the exact sound your brain has been filtering out and forces it to listen up. And here are some super simple examples in English, just so you get the idea. Rock and lock. Niece and knees. The only tiny little difference is that one sound at the very beginning. When you practice listening to pairs like this in the language you're learning, you're targeting your brain's exact blind spots and forcing it to build new sound categories. And hey, this isn't just some nice theory. This is backed by serious science. Researchers at Stanford actually proved this works. They took a group of Japanese adults who couldn't hear that R versus L difference. They put them through some very specific training using minimal pairs, and the results were just wow. Brain scans showed they had physically rewired the neural pathways in their brains. They had, and I love this phrase, learned to hear the unhearable.
And you want to know how they did it? It's basically a simple little game that anyone can play. First, you listen to one of the words from a minimal pair. Second, you just take a guess at which word you think it was. And third, and this is the absolute key, this secret sauce, you get immediate feedback, correct or incorrect. It's that instant feedback loop that acts like a personal trainer for your brain, forcing it to create those new sound piles we were talking about.
Okay, so you've rewired your ears. You can finally hear the sounds clearly. But what about speaking? This is where that second big wall comes up, the fear of not knowing the right word. But what if I told you that real fluency isn't about having a massive vocabulary? It's about learning how to improvise.
Have you ever played the party game Taboo? Because it is the perfect way to understand this skill. If you haven't played, the rules are simple. You have to get your team to guess a secret word on a card, but you are forbidden from using a whole list of the most obvious related words.
So for instance, let's say your word is baseball. The card says you can't say sport, ball, pitcher, or hitter. You're stuck. So you're forced to get creative, right? You have to describe your way around the problem. You might say something like, "It's that game they play in America in the summer," or "You use a wooden stick to hit a round thing and then run around a shape with 4 corners." You have to improvise.
So what in the world does this party game have to do with learning Spanish or French? Well, it has everything to do with it. That little jolt of panic you feel in taboo when you can't say the obvious word, that is the exact same feeling you get in a real conversation when your brain just goes blank and you can't find the word you need.
And this is the real definition of fluency. Let's be clear, it is not about knowing every single word. It's about being able to communicate an idea without grinding to a halt. It's the ability to hit a roadblock, a word you don't know, and instead of just freezing and giving up, you find another way. You skillfully talk around it, just like in taboo, using the words you do know.
So from now on, you can treat every single conversation like a game of language taboo. And there's really only one crucial rule. No switching back to your native language. No exceptions. The moment you get stuck on a word, and you will, that's your signal. It's time to improvise. Describe the concept. Talk about what it does. This isn't failing. This is winning. It is the best speaking practice you could ever ask for.
Okay, so let's tie this all together, shall we? Your path to actually understanding and speaking a new language isn't some complex 10-year plan. It really just comes down to playing 2 simple, super targeted games that train the exact skills you need.
Here they are, your 2 core drills. First, train your ears by playing the minimal pair game. Listen, guess, get that immediate feedback. That's what rewires your brain to hear with clarity. And second, train your mouth by playing the language taboo game. Make a pact with yourself to not use English and force yourself to get creative and describe things. That's what builds real, confident conversational skill. I think this quote just sums up the whole mindset perfectly. When you're trying to improvise your way around a word you don't know, there's no such thing as a mistake. You're not failing a test. You're actively creating a new way to be understood. Every missed beat is just you creating a whole new rhythm.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. We always think of fluency as this far-off finish line that we have to suffer to get to. But what if that's all wrong? What if fluency isn't a destination at all, but it's just the ability and the confidence to simply play the game? Thanks so much for tuning in.